Welcome to For Instance Podcast, the tech podcast where we spin out endless supposals about cloud, AI, the edge, and more. We sift through current events, opine about what it means for practitioners and leaders, and interview industry observers about where different technologies are taking us. If you like digging into the story behind the story in tech, this podcast is for you.
Welcome to episode 1 of For Instance Podcast.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are Sarbjeet Johal and Sarah Musick, and we're super excited to bring you the first episode of the For Instance podcast. So welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everybody, for a warm welcome to our announcement of new podcast called For Instance. I hope you got the pun in the name. Instance is a widely used technical term from coding to all the way to instance of a server or instance of even a data center. The plan for our podcast is to review the news of last 2 weeks in B2B tech and also give us our commentary. It will include earnings as well as the events which happen from time to time in B2B tech.
And we're going to cover cloud, AI, and edge. So I wouldn't say that we'll completely restrict ourselves to those three, but I think you can expect that those three will take up the bulk of our time.
Definitely, we will add all ancillary sort of topics to it because everything sort of revolves around these three sets of technologies. With that said, let's get into the big news from last 2 weeks.
Awesome. So the first that we wanted to highlight was the proposed amended guidelines from the FTC for mergers and acquisitions. This is really interesting given some of what we've seen over the past few years in tech. I find it really difficult in tech because I would say my posture as a person, generally speaking, is pretty pro antitrust, or is that anti-antitrust? I think looking for antitrust is a good thing. We want lots of businesses to thrive, but when you have a truly innovative company that's doing something that nobody else has done, trying to keep the market open, but at the same time not hamper that company from innovating, I think that's a fine line to walk. So it's an interesting read. Some of the language from an enforceability perspective, I think will be challenging. But what do you think, Sarbjeet?
Yeah, actually, Lena Khan is a controversial personality. She wrote a paper on Amazon before she was appointed to this position of FTC chair. I think they are pushing it a little bit too much, which if you see from one angle, which we need that. Bigger companies are becoming bigger and there are $3 trillion market cap companies. On the other side, the smaller guys are struggling to make any difference in the market because bigger companies have a breadth of portfolio of their services and they can bundle things, they can give discount on one and then charge the sort of MSRP on the other and show market that they're gaining traction there. So there's a lot of things going on. We have seen this time and again, like Zoom versus Teams kind of stuff, right? So I think the intent is right, but approach I think is kind of controversial. So yeah, only time will tell. But I believe in the American exceptionalism, and I think our current FTC chair tries to challenge that.
I'm a believer in it too. And I think part of what makes it difficult is, when you're looking at, in fairness, if you look at, some of the antitrust activity there was around Facebook as it began to grow, some of it was that what's now Meta, they were a victim of their own success. And that's not to say that they didn't behave in an antitrust way as time wore on. But I do think that's something that's, really difficult in technology when you have companies that are super innovative. Having said that, they're not above going after each other just from a competitive jockeying perspective. So definitely interesting to keep a tab on for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Another aspect is that that FTC's role is very tedious. So they want to help consumers with low prices on one end, but on the other end, they want all companies to have a fair chance. but the economics works in opposite direction, if you will. If you're bigger, only you can reap the benefits of scale,
Scale.
yeah, and small companies can't be that efficient, you know. There are no economies of scale there, right? So it is kind of hard for them to decide, like, okay, it's, oh yeah, it's cheaper if one company is big. Walmart is giving you the cheapest prices, but it's gobbling up all the sort of retail from the smaller shops and you know, mom and pop shops all around the US. I mean, how do you balance that, for example, right? So the job is very hard, and they're trying their best. And for us, maybe in general, they seem to focus a lot more on tech for some
They
reason.
do. They do. Yeah, and some of that may be, and this was one of the more interesting sections, I think, in the proposals, was the issue of multiple acquisitions. So that's something that every tech company really that's been around for any length of time participates in, is a series of acquisitions. There are core competencies that you wanna scale up on, or you wanna augment what you already have within the walls of the company, and so you go through an acquisition. And the guidelines, the proposed guidelines said that if there's one acquisition that comes under scrutiny, they will probably take a look at all of them. So they look at it a little bit as a sweater. And so if they pull on one thread in the sweater, they think that it's going to become an unraveling activity, insofar as the fact that they'll likely to be looking at some of the other acquisitions, which is both encouraging and a little unnerving.
It's kind of double-edged sword. Like their narrative is that they want to discourage M&A, but if you discourage M&A, what happens is most of the tech companies which are started here in the Bay Area or all around the US, for most B2B companies, the top exit strategy is M&A.
That's exactly right.
So
Yep,
yeah, so they can't survive on their own alone because they're a niche player in storage or network or security, right? So if you stop that M&A activity, or if you tell Microsoft, hey, you can't get any more bigger, then it discourages these innovators to say, like, how will I compete with these big guys if they don't buy us, or if
that's
there's
right.
no path to M&A?
And for yeah, for a lot of these founders or the founding teams, the early employees, that's their nest egg. They take some real chances for the sake of the company, because they do want that dream of getting acquired by a big label and changing all of their lives. It's part of the American dream. I think it's exciting when situations like that pan out. Uh, so
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
I sit on both sides of the fence on this one. So
Yeah, we all, I think most of us are both like are on both sides, you know, like it's
mhm.
again tedious problem to solve. I've been in that sort of in those shoes where we were working day and night almost during dot-com days. Even after that, even till today, people who work really hard on certain things, they should be rewarded. I think because they should have this good financial outcome. If somebody is making more money, it doesn't that doesn't mean that they are ripping off others, I believe.
Yeah.
So
I
there's that.
agree. Yeah. Well, so one of the this is so random, but one of the great American success stories recently that came out of Hollywood was Arnold Schwarzenegger, an immigrant who, he had three different careers, as a bodybuilder, as a politician, as a movie star. And, the notion potentially that he'd be held back from accomplishing any of what he did, it's fun. I think people get a charge out of watching that kind of success and that kind of, trajectory.
Yep. Along with that comes the burnout, and that's real as well. And many times, people who are trying their best to make a difference, from bottom of their heart, and some people are, quite a few times, there are people who are greedy who enter the game, and they want to make quick buck, and they get caught many times, but sometimes they don't. So it's
Yeah.
all over the place, and it's just a societal
Messy.
thing.
It's
I think it's
very
just.
messy. Yeah, I agree.
But
As long
sometimes
as
I say,
it's Yeah, this
Uh-huh.
may sound strange to say, but as long as it stays messy, I think we're on the right track. As soon as it gets too easy, then I think we're in trouble. To sort of uh decipher some of these things, I think is really difficult. So I don't I don't think it'll stop being messy.
Yeah, actually, definitely. I have worked a lot in Europe, and I see a very stark difference between. I'm born and raised in India, so I've seen the Asian, sort of Eastern sort of thinking, and then also in the middle thinking in Europe, EU, and how they approach things, and how we approach things in here in the US. I'm in the US for the last 28, 29 years. It's the way we do things is a lot different than Europe, and of course a lot more different than Asia. Our systems are built in a way that they favor the people who take risks, and our bankruptcy laws are the best in the world, and other countries are trying to put those things in place, but it's hard for them because their financial institutions are not strong enough, or they don't have that base like what we have for all these sort of more than 100 years,
Yeah.
if you will. And I am I'm very bullish on US all the time. So there's that. Yeah, I think we have spent enough time on this topic. So let's get to some of the bigger news. Microsoft released earnings. So did Google, and TSMC as well. TSMC revenue dipped by 10%, and they are halting the rollout of their factory in Arizona. What do you think about that,
Mhm. Yeah,
Sarah?
I think it's worth following, given some of the geopolitical situation. I think a globally resilient silicon supply chain is something that we need. And that one's not necessarily the best news, especially for the folks who absorb what they manufacture. So AMD, NVIDIA, to some extent, AWS Graviton. It's not, I mean, a year's delay is not a huge thing, but it is interesting that given sort of the race, the new and newly reinterpreted race that we have with AI, that that there would be a delay. It's been a long-standing thing. And by long-standing, we mean the past couple of years as far as, some of the drought that we've seen as far as silicon. So, some of what I saw and read said, it's not going to make a huge impact because a lot of that can be rolled back to Taiwan. But I do think that may put a strain on what's going on there already. So worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think partially is economic reason, partially it can be political, So yeah, it's we know that China and Taiwan situation there, and also
Hmm.
we know that government is putting money into local companies, including Intel,
Right.
and Intel is trying to be in the fab business, and so there are a lot of moving parts here, and yeah, it is kind of a little bit discouraging news. I that's how I see it, but hopefully it will be rectified pretty soon.
Yeah.
So that was TSMC and Microsoft. Microsoft cloud growth was 1% lower than what they reported last quarter last year. So it's always year over year sort of quarter. That's how market wants to see these numbers. But on the other side, Google Cloud grew at much faster pace, and their stock actually jumped to about 6 to 7% after hours and next day as well. Microsoft was down about 2 to 3% after hours, but next day, which is today, they recovered pretty well. So they are almost same what they were yesterday. So not much damage was done
Yeah.
there. Expectations are very high from AI from Microsoft, and I did a survey on Twitter asking people who has good narrative around AI plus cloud. Not only AI, not only cloud, AI plus cloud, right? I
The
gave
big
them three
three.
options: Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. And majority picked um, Microsoft. So numbers will be on the screen here. I will insert that screen in post production here. And I thought very I thought about that number. Actually we have been seeing, we feel that way as well, because Microsoft is throwing a lot more information out there as compared to Google. But definitely AWS was sort of mum or just not saying much at all around AI for many months. And then gradually they started talking about um, Andy Jassy gave an interview to John Ford of CNBC. That was a very telling interview. I did a big summary on that, 18 points, like what he mentioned. It was a very telling interview. But yesterday in New York, there was AWS Summit, and they announced quite a few things. What do you think about that AI and cloud mix, and who is gaining traction, and what's the best foot forward?
Yeah, so one of the most interesting sideshows to me in this one is AWS Bedrock, because I don't think that, and this is surprising for AWS, they're usually really good about evangelizing their services, but they have not talked about Bedrock a lot, from the standpoint of a generative AI, serverless solution that they would have available to their customers. So I find that surprising. And so from that standpoint, I don't think it's at all unexpected that Microsoft would potentially lead there, because with the substantial investment they made in ChatGPT and the sort of lightning speed with which they started integrating it into Bing and Teams and other ways that they're looking to plug it in, there is another side to that, and that's the side of revenue growth. So to what extent this is going to become sort of a revenue driver for them. And I read an article just recently, well, within the past day or so, that kind of made me chuckle, because their description of it, and you and I were talking about, Copilot and some of what they might do there. The way they described it, and I think it's realistic, but it kind of makes people a little jumpy, is gradual revenue growth, gradual monetization. And I think that's a healthy posture, but people also want to know if it's going to cost that much that you're going to be making money out the door. Google historically, between the three, uh, if you look at BigQuery and, a lot of what it's done as a cloud provider, I think people tend to go to Google for research projects and different things. They've owned the corner on the market, but I think from a marketing perspective, they've let Microsoft kind of jump ahead a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I okay. There was super cloud. I'm going to tie two things together. There was a super cloud event which the Cube folks did, SiliconANGLE, the Cube folks, and I participated in that. There were a bunch of vendors. Super cloud term is gaining traction. The idea is that anything built on top of cloud, newer set of services like a Snowflake and um, Cloudflare kind of services, which sit on the side of the cloud, if you will, parallel to cloud, or on top. They're built on top of cloud, right?
Right.
The new identity mechanisms, right? So they're cross cloud. So like you don't care if you're using Azure or AWS or Google Cloud underneath for your infrastructure. You can use these services on anywhere, right? So that's the idea behind super cloud. In that context, I think we have to see that there are three things I said there. One is that we have to see the AI as B2B versus B2C. In B2C world, or from business to consumer sort of scenario, we are pleasantly um, shocked, if you will, that hey, this is it makes me productive. I can write things better, faster. It sort of fixes the clean sheet problem. It gives me pointers I can write more about and stuff like that. It makes individual people a lot more productive. But in the B2B world, there are like more. We have to be more cautious about the accuracy, explainability. Definitely, in B2B world, actually, there are two other segments, sub-segments. One is the creation part, one is operation. During the creation part, for example, when you're writing the code, coders can leverage it to to maximum degree, and then they can review the code and look at the code. If it looks good, they can just block it into their systems and deploy it and all that stuff, right? And they can write better specs. They can write better business case. They can, if they're looking for money to build something new within a company, they can build the business case and ask ChatGPT to write, for example, some stuff blurb for them, all good stuff during creation, right? But in operations, we need predictability, we need accuracy, and many of our systems are very close to what regulators look at, especially systems of record. That's what I mentioned in our talk. So systems of record have to be accurate, right? We have accounting in place, taxes, and all that stuff. We can't make ChatGPT make up numbers or make up things, laws on the fly. We can't do
Or
that, right?
extemporize. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
we
not a
can. We
place where you want
cannot.
to get creative. Yeah.
Yes, we cannot tolerate any hallucinations in that sort of world. So this is what I said. I said we should not take the large language models anywhere near our systems of record, right? But our systems of engagement and systems of innovation, yes, we can start tinkering with um, generative AI in those spaces, especially in the creation mode, not in the operation mode. But definitely in the operation mode, like yesterday I was at this IBM summit here in Palo Alto with at the Cube Studio again. We had great discussions. There were some IBM fellows there, very seasoned scientists from industry, discussing stuff with them. We will have use of generative AI in operations as well, but those models will be very highly specialized models in
That
security
makes
space,
sense.
in scale on network sides, and security is a huge problem going forward for us. Ransomware attacks and whatnot. I think we'll end up using a lot more AI in that space. Those are my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Actually, it was like more like 5 cents there.
Good sense.
Good sense.
So what, having said that, kind of dovetailing that with, some of what we've seen about Windows potential proposals for offerings from Microsoft 365 and the $30 a month. Do you think it's going to be worth it for consumers? Are they looking at this as a loss leader so that they can, potentially capture, more market share? What do you think they're thinking in that regard?
Yeah, there was a lot of talk around Twitter and on LinkedIn. I gave my 2 cents very bluntly, which I usually do, that I think $30 per person per month is a lot, right? Additional $30 per person per month for just getting some additional AI benefits. I think it's a lot.
Hmm.
The two things. One is that you can't. I think you should not price the AI separately. It's not a product. It's a feature of a product. You can hike the price of your product, like Salesforce did last week, but not just say, okay, for $30 extra, you will get AI. I mean, then if somebody is not paying you $30 extra, I mean, you will give them this dumb software. I mean, it sort of doesn't make sense to me. That's one thing. The second thing is, by doing that, it opens up an opportunity for their competitors, like, which is in this case mainly Google on the productivity software side, that Google can come and say, like, hey, we're not going to charge you extra for AI. It is part of the thing, and it's cost of doing business. By doing that, they can get more market share. So
That would
that's
change it
what do you
pretty
think?
quickly. Yeah, I think that would pivot it pretty quickly. Which, this is sort of historically predictable behavior for Microsoft, that
Oh yeah.
they they take advantage of the existing ecosystem. They potentially layer some extra costs on it. Those costs might not be massive, but when you're thinking about a few thousand people, that's going to add up, pretty quickly. And if you're looking at smaller organizations, it might not make sense. And if Google were to roll it in, I think that's going to be a risk.
And but the other part is the putting Windows in cloud as well. I'm a little bit concerned about that because Windows will affect B2B as well as
Yes.
B2C as well. A lot of people have Windows on their PCs at home as well. Because anything which goes into cloud, then it's the normal tendency for them to charge on annual basis, if not monthly, right? So Office went to cloud, we pay every year now, even
Hmm.
individually. So when Windows goes to cloud, they may start charging us, even if it is, $50 a year. It's much more expensive than just getting Windows. Right now, we get
Over
Windows
the
and the
life of
PC
the
lasts for 3-4 years.
product. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, and as much as I love the cloud, which is to say very much, I mean, I work in cloud. There are some things that I think you can make a very fair case just shouldn't go, because then you open up sort of a Pandora's box of risks and latency issues and communication issues and outages and doing that with a very basic component of accessibility to the rest of the information world, the operating system seems kind of dicey to me. And, obviously there'd be local caching on the machine. Essentially you'd have an image that would be on the machine. But if it's trying to reach out for an update or it's trying to pull information because there's, there's something that has to be reconciled, I think that could be a problem. And then, of course, there's the bandwidth issue because all of a sudden you have the operating system communicating with the internet. So, yeah.
I know. Actually, right now we are recording this video on Windows PC, and my PC is going berserk. The fan is going on and on because we need local power for a lot of use cases as well, right? So I don't know how the graphics part will work, how you can record like heavy duty videos and stuff like that when Windows is in cloud, and
Mm.
how the IO will work. Yes, definitely networks are improving. I have this 1 gig down, 1 gig up kind of bandwidth at home, but not everybody has it. So I think they have to keep this hybrid mode for long. Maybe that actually, by the way, that news was put out like half-hearted. I mean, we plan to do that. That's what they said, right? So perhaps they will do that in the B2B context first. In B2B context, the virtual PCs, we have been trying to do that for a long time.
Yeah, that's
It's
not
not a great
necessarily.
success
Yeah.
story. VMware tried doing that. All IBM, and you name it, every big vendor tried to give this virtual PC sort of access to a bunch of companies, but it didn't fly. In some cases, it does. Remote workers and remote office workers, franchises and stuff like that. I think there can be a scenario. I think they have to run hybrid for many years to come. Means like
Yeah.
you can get a Windows PC or Windows in cloud, or you can just do it locally.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you made that distinction because I had the remote worker in my head because there are still a lot of folks who are remote. There are a lot of folks who'd like to remain remote. So if you're on site, you're on campus, the issue of, I mean, VDI obviously has done that with the entire machine. And so in that sense, it's not, revolutionary, but to sort of break apart the components and do that with the operating system for a remote worker, maybe it would work. I don't know. I think it sounds a little frat, but time will tell. Mhm.
Yeah, I think it works in certain areas. I've seen it work. I did some work with Cerner, which is a health tech company based in Kansas, and all they used was Citrix. In
Mhm.
they just stream the PC to doctors in office, and it's just over the wire.
Yeah.
The OS is sort of sitting somewhere else, so it works in some cases. But Microsoft coming in saying we will host the Windows in our cloud, there are so many implications to the partner ecosystem, to resellers, VARs, what we call value-added resellers. Um, they sell it right now. The OEM business, what will happen to that? Dell, HP, other people build PCs, Lenovo. What will happen there? Because right now the Windows is sold to them as OEM. A lot of unknowns there.
And for,
Yes.
client applications, I think that could be interesting too, because, if in some sense, it's the same situation as, a VDI, when you've fully virtualized the machine at that point. But there are some issues with client applications that you need to have running right there on the machine. And I think that's another one, the software ecosystem that would need to be considered.
Definitely. I think, yeah, again, I think different use cases for different personas. Um, I think they will keep that in mind. And Windows looks like a loss leader for Microsoft, but having operating system, if you we promised I will double click on things, right? Or triple click. So if you really think deep down, look at the companies which are 3 trillion, almost 3 trillion or 3 trillion in market cap. They have few things common. They own the operating system, right? There's Microsoft owns Windows, and Apple owns two big operating systems. One is for your phone and one for your PCs as well. So owning the operating system, owning the container where things will sit in is a huge advantage,
Mhm.
because whatever you make, you can put that at the right place. If container is yours, you can fit the things better in that container as compared to somebody else building things to fit in your container, right? So operating system is like a container here. So I think uh, having operating system with you is a huge advantage. And I was looking through the transcript of my Microsoft's earnings. It's very juicy thing to do, actually. If you have time to take a look at the transcripts of the um, earnings, it tells you where the focus of the company is, and also from the questions it tells you what the focus of the market is, what market is asking vendors to do, or what they think they will do, versus what vendor wants to push, right? So there was hardly any mention of Windows in the prepared remarks, but there were questions from the analysts, right? And on the Google side, they mentioned that the capex will go down a little bit just once, and then the the questions, the analysts are all over it. You're like, oh my God, you're
Yeah.
slowing down your capex. What happened there? And then there was like so. It's interesting analysis. Actually, I did the word analysis and put it out on Twitter. I will try to put those pictures in this podcast in the video format, and interesting stuff.
Yeah. The Google's earnings and their story as far as the performance of Google Cloud. I think this is a really fun one to watch. One of the things that I view as a bellwether of the industry is the Flexera State of the Cloud report. And if you look at Google's growth and how it's perceived by practitioners and leaders in B2B just over the past year, I think the Chat GBT, open AI partnership for Microsoft is super, super timely, because I think they need to be concerned if they're not already, and their antitrust suit, as Google sues Microsoft because, of the gravity that they're sort of Google's claim is bludgeoning people with the Windows Server issue in the cloud. Some of the numbers that came out of that were super interesting in terms of actual revenues for Azure. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'd like to see Google do better with the generative AI story, but this is early. We've got to remember that. I think for a lot of people in the industry, it feels like it's been a lifetime because so much has happened since the beginning of the year. I mean, that's part of why we decided not to talk about the whole first 6 months of the year and catch everybody up because there was just so much to talk about that we'd probably be here for 5 hours. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, to our viewers, like we plan to do the first episode. We will cover all the things that happened so far this year, and we'll create a baseline. And they'll say, no, that'll be too much. That this 1 year has been like 5 years for like a. It seems
Another
like the
year.
pace of technology changed, especially with generative AI coming into the picture. Everybody jumped into it. Every vendor sits with the Jensen of NVIDIA and then do the press conference. Yeah, it's crazy. So we didn't do that. We will do a summary episode at some point within the next 4 to 6 weeks. No promise made there, but we will do it definitely. That's what happened so far this year for CIOs to consider their posture, for practitioners to take classes or certifications in. So our goal is to give you folks enough information, that a bigger picture, if you will. These are the things happening in tech. Take the steps to react to it. Like the Ross, Ross clothing company, right? So they used to have this tagline. It's a free country. Um, uh, it's a free country, dress accordingly, or something like that. So I adopted that. It's like, hey, the tech is moving fast. Act accordingly. so
Right.
so we plan to bring you the key news and the pointer. The key is that we will give you pointers. You can double click on that, and if there are any questions, actually, we can answer. Definitely ping us. By the way, on that note, we are going to put the show notes in a Google Doc, and with the links, all the links to which I've been mentioning, and Sarah has been mentioning, that we will give you information. We'll put that in that Google Doc. That'll be read only for you folks. And if you think we are missing something for last 2 weeks, what happened in B2B tech, we will put that in, and we will give the credit to you, the kudos to you for mentioning that, in that doc, which will be tied to the every bi-weekly episode. So please let us know if we have missed anything big which you think should have been put into this podcast.
Agreed. We hope there's going to be a lot of juicy information, a lot of juicy in-depth information in the show notes. So we plan to make those high value for you. We know everybody's busy, so even that something you can kind of munch on as you go. Hopefully it'll provide some good info.
Yeah, the pact we have made between us is that we want to respect the listener's time. We don't really personally, really don't care how many people watch it, but whatever they watch, whoever watches, they get the best value out of it. So and also give us feedback, all kind of feedback, good, bad, ugly, what we can do. Should we condense the format? Should we change the format, and so forth. So we'll be listening to you guys. Anything else, like as departing notes? Actually, I have this few things here. I'm reading my notes, guys, now. China finalized their AI guidelines, which is one of its first, one of its kind, if you will, first big country to put those guidelines out there. I mean, of course, it's China. We know, like, they may change those things like
Probably. Yeah,
frequently, but I think the US is lagging in that sort of area, that our regulators are way behind what's happening in the AI space. US government emails hacked. That can be, you want to mention that?
yeah. That's a story. Another one that I'll be personally following. So one of uh, sort of a personal project that I did years ago was kind of digging into what was being reported about the Office of Personnel Management hack in 2013, 2014. So that, and the aliases were Captain America and Tony Stark of that one. It was super ironic, but it is a bit of a bellwether, sort of what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If some of these ploys are being leveraged against the federal government, I think it's safe to say that there are things that can be used against the enterprise. And so that is one from an email perspective that I would keep an eye on.
Yeah, actually, all these hacks, especially when our government agencies get hacked. I mean, a lot of individuals, consumers, even businesses lose some, some sleep, if you will. Like, hey, if you can get hacked, then who are we? So how will we protect ourselves? And I think it's very optics of government getting hacked are not good. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Let's cover that topic in the next episode. Actually, how the blame is coming to Microsoft for that hack, and yeah, we'll cover that in the next episode. The last thing, Lena Khan testified to this committee, House Judiciary Committee, and she was like brutally questioned on her ability to serve and her motives and all that stuff. That's interesting um, thing to watch. It's on YouTube, so we'll put the link in our show notes as well. So with that said, we wish you great next 2 weeks, and we'll see you on Thursday 2 weeks from now.
Thanks for
Thanks, Sarah.
listening.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everybody.